Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you're like us, you want the critical information on complex issues delivered fast, with enough detail to make you the most informed person in the room.
Today, we're getting into something you probably touch dozens of times a day. Plastics.
Right. And specifically, their shocking ability to act as chemical imposters inside your body.
We're diving deep into the world of endocrine-disrupting chemicals, or EDCs. They're embedded right in our everyday plastics, and for the past 2 decades, researchers have built this, well, undeniable case.
A case that these compounds can mimic or just aggressively interfere with our most foundational hormones.
Specifically, estrogen.
So our mission today is pretty simple. We're giving you the shortcut. We'll show you the 3 main chemical groups you really need to know about.
That would be bisphenol A, which is BPA, phthalates, and then the deceptive replacements, BPS and BPF.
Exactly. We'll untack the mechanism of this chemical identity theft and reveal the documented biological consequences, even when the exposure is incredibly low.
And this is such crucial knowledge. We're moving past just, general warnings about plastic.
Yeah, this is about the cellular blueprint.
It is. It's about understanding how these molecules hijack the body's entire hormonal operating system.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
I think we need to start by clarifying why estrogen interference is so, well, catastrophic. When people hear estrogen, they immediately think of reproduction. But the sources we reviewed make it so clear that disrupting estrogen is like jamming the control signal for the entire body.
It's a master regulator. You're absolutely right. While it is, of course, critical for reproductive development and function.
And like ovarian health, fertility.
Right. But it has equally vital roles everywhere else. Estrogen is essential for maintaining your bone density. It's a key component in metabolic regulation, how we store energy.
And cardiovascular function, too, I read.
The protective role, yeah. And it's even involved in really sophisticated neurologic signaling in the brain. So if you disrupt estrogen, you're disrupting systems from your head to your toes.
And what's fascinating here is that the endocrine system isn't built for, like, brute force. It operates on whispers, not shouts. It's incredibly sensitive.
Yeah, it is. Think of your hormone levels as an extremely delicate, perfectly tuned musical instrument.
Okay.
The sources all emphasize that because the system is designed to respond to extremely low concentrations, we're talking picograms per milliliter, which is almost nothing.
So even tiny disruptions can have a huge effect.
Exactly. Even minor, persistent disruptions from these external chemicals can fundamentally alter biological processes. You don't need a huge toxic exposure to cause trouble.
You just need to knock the tuning fork slightly off key.
That's a perfect analogy.
So how do these plastic chemicals, which are not hormones, manage to hit that tuning fork? Let's detail that core mechanism.
Well, the primary way they interfere is through what we call molecular mimicry.
Okay, so they're faking it.
They are. If you think of natural estrogen as a master key that fits specific locks, the estrogen receptors, ER-alpha and ER-beta, these EDCs are essentially master counterfeiters.
Their shape is just similar enough to fit in the lock.
Similar enough that they can bind directly to those estrogen receptors. They're known scientifically as xenoestrogens, foreign estrogens.
And when they bind, they actually activate a response.
Yes. They don't just sit there. They activate an estrogen-like response in the cell. They turn the lock.
So they turn the lock, but maybe they turn it differently or keep it turned on for too long. But the disruption isn't just about faking the key, is it?
No, not at all. They also actively gum up the entire hormonal machine.
How so?
Beyond just mimicking and binding, these EDCs have other documented actions. They can block your natural hormone from binding. They can alter gene expression, disrupt the actual synthesis of your own hormones.
Wow, okay.
And they can change how hormones are metabolized by the liver. And critically, they interfere with the complex endocrine feedback loops that are constantly trying to balance everything. It's a system-wide interference.
Let's move to the chemical lineup then, starting with the most notorious one, bisphenol A, or BPA. Even with all the public awareness, where are people still getting this exposure?
BPA is just stubbornly present. The traditional sources are still there. Hard plastic food containers, some reusable water bottles, and the epoxy lining of almost all canned foods.
The canned food lining, that's a big one.
Right.
But what's the hidden source?
The biggest one, and the one that shocks most people, is thermal receipts.
Right. The shiny paper from the grocery store or the ATM.
Exactly. That slick paper is coated in it, and when you handle that receipt, the chemical absorption through your skin is immediate.
And since BPA is the classic xenoestrogen, what does the clinical literature connect it to?
Because it acts like estrogen, the clinical associations are really broad. We see links to altered timing of puberty, sometimes earlier, sometimes delayed,
Okay.
and significant changes in fertility, like sperm quality and ovarian function. And
Hmm?
surprisingly, the development of PCOS-like symptoms.
And that would lead right into the metabolic side of things.
Absolutely. BPA is strongly tied to metabolic dysfunction. We're talking increased insulin resistance, which is a precursor to type 2 diabetes, and higher risk markers for cardiovascular disease.
But the crucial finding, the one that really challenges everything, is the low-dose effect.
Yes. Measurable estrogenic activity has been shown in labs even at exposures below the EPA's current regulatory safety limits. This really emphasizes that for EDCs, there's no linear safe dose.
That low-dose finding just flips traditional toxicology on its head. Okay, so BPA is the mimic. Now let's look at phthalates. They're different, right?
They are structurally different, yes.
So if they aren't binding to the estrogen receptors directly like BPA, how do they mess with the hormonal blueprint?
Phthalates are more of a subtle disruptor. You find them in flexible PVC plastic shower curtains, vinyl flooring, a lot of food packaging films, and importantly, in personal care products.
Like lotions and things.
Yes, they help stabilize fragrances and make lotions spreadable.
And their mechanism isn't about counterfeiting the estrogen key.
No, they don't do that. Phthalates primarily disrupt hormone balance indirectly. Their major action is profoundly anti-androgenic.
So they go after testosterone.
They do. They actively interfere with hormone synthesis, specifically suppressing the production and signaling of androgens, like testosterone. Think of it this way. They don't turn up the estrogen volume, they just turn off the opposing volume.
So they're muting the opposition.
And that indirect interference shifts the hormonal landscape heavily toward what we call relative estrogen dominance.
Which explains why the findings for phthalates often focus so much on male reproductive health.
Exactly. We see significant associations with lower testosterone levels, altered sperm morphology, and reduced sperm count and motility.
But it's not just men.
Not at all. Because they disrupt synthesis, they're also linked to pregnancy complications like increased risks for preterm birth and preeclampsia, and they contribute to early puberty in girls.
Which brings us to this just truly frustrating paradox. The public got wise to BPA and industry responded with a BPA-free label.
Which was, often just a chemical shell game.
Involving bisphenol S, BPS, and bisphenol F, BPF.
It's chemical substitution, plain and simple, and it highlights this massive blind spot in our current regulation. Companies just swapped BPA for these structurally very similar molecules to meet consumer demand.
But then the research on BPS and BPF came in, and what did it reveal?
Researchers found, often within just a couple of years, that BPS and BPF have equal, or in some cases, even stronger estrogenic potential than the original BPA.
Are you serious? Stronger?
In some studies, yes. They bind to the same receptors, cause comparable metabolic and reproductive changes, and importantly, they seem to be more resistant to biodegradation.
Meaning they stick around longer.
They persist longer in the environment and potentially in our bodies. The safer alternative was often just a different name for the same problem.
That's just staggering. It means that well-intentioned choice of buying a BPA-free water bottle may not have reduced your exposure to endocrine disruptors at all.
It may not have.
Okay, let's synthesize these findings now and look at the documented health consequences, starting with the area of greatest vulnerability, reproduction and development.
The collective evidence across all these EDCs, it paints a really difficult picture for reproductive health. The hormonal signals that are necessary for healthy development are just getting scrambled.
We're seeing strong associations with reduced ovarian reserve, higher risks for endometriosis, disrupted menstrual cycles.
And significantly lower success rates in assisted reproductive technologies like IVF.
So this is about disrupting the fundamental biological timeline for starting a family.
It is. And that timeline disruption extends to early life. The sources all stress this profound concern over fetal and early childhood exposure. That's when the body is doing its critical hormonal programming.
And there are studies on this, right?
Multiple extensive cohort studies all over the world consistently link prenatal and early childhood exposure to both phthalates and BPA, with earlier breast development and an earlier onset of menarche.
The first menstrual period. Shifting to systemic disruption, we have to talk about the role EDCs play in the modern metabolic crisis. They're not just changing reproductive cycles. They are, it seems, reprogramming how our bodies handle food and energy.
This is a massive, growing field of concern. EDCs fall into a category often called obesogens.
Obesogens.
They're linked not just to general weight gain, but specifically to adipogenesis, the promotion and creation of new fat cells, even at very low exposures.
And that leads to what?
That metabolic disruption leads to increased insulin resistance, higher fasting glucose, and significantly elevated risk markers for type 2 diabetes. The disruption literally changes our baseline body chemistry toward chronic disease.
And we can't forget the thyroid. It's like the unsung hero of the endocrine system.
It's the engine room.
Yeah.
And both phthalates and bisphenols can interfere dramatically with thyroid function.
Oh.
They can disrupt the actual levels of T3 and T4 hormones, interfere with thyroid receptor binding inside the cells, and mess with the transport proteins that carry those hormones through the bloodstream.
And the implications of that, especially during pregnancy, are massive.
Absolutely. Thyroid hormones are non-negotiably critical for fetal brain development. Any disruption during pregnancy can have long-lasting neurodevelopmental consequences.
Finally, let's provide some nuance on cancer. We're not saying plastics cause cancer, but they interact with the hormonal pathways that influence it. Correct.
That is the key distinction. By acting as a strong, often chronic, external estrogen signal, endocrine disruption can significantly influence susceptibility to hormone-responsive tumors.
Particularly breast cancer.
Particularly breast cancer. They interfere with the gene pathways that involve those estrogen receptors, essentially creating a longer window or a greater vulnerability for certain types of cancer to develop.
So they're vulnerability accelerators, not direct causal agents.
That's a great way to put it.
So given this truly systemic impact, let's move to the practical reality. How are we being exposed to these EDCs in our actual daily lives?
The exposure is continuous, and it's coming from all sides. We're exposed by heating food in plastic containers. That heat is a massive leaching accelerant.
Right. It forces the chemicals out.
It does. Also by drinking from worn plastic bottles, eating canned foods, and, as we said, just handling thermal receipts.
That receipt point really sticks with you. You walk into a store, you pay, and you're exposing yourself.
You are, and we shouldn't ignore environmental exposure either. The inhalation of airborne microplastics and dust that carry these chemicals. That's another documented pathway.
And the bottom line is that things like heat, UV light, just physical wear and tear.
They all increase the rate at which these chemicals leach out and enter your body.
Okay, so eliminating plastics from modern life is, let's be honest, a non-starter. But the sources do provide actionable, evidence-based steps to significantly reduce exposure. What's realistic and impactful?
The first, most crucial step: never ever microwave food in plastic. Use glass or ceramic containers for reheating.
That seems easy enough.
Second, switch your food storage containers to glass or stainless steel as much as you can. It takes some effort, but the reduction in leaching is significant.
What about food choices?
Reduce consumption of canned foods because of that epoxy lining. Prioritize fresh or frozen whenever you can. And for the receipt problem, choose electronic receipts or just decline the paper one.
And if you have to take one?
Handle it quickly and avoid touching it if your hands are damp or oily, since that increases absorption.
We can also use the recycling codes as a guide, can't we?
Yes. Actively avoid plastics labeled with recycling codes #3, which is PVC, #6, polystyrene, and #7.
#7 is the other category, right? Where they hide BPA and BPS.
It frequently includes polycarbonates with those bisphenols. And finally, filtering your tap water is recommended not just for traditional contaminants, but to reduce microplastic particles.
That's a powerful and practical list. But before we finish, we have to look critically at the research itself, because the scientists studying this stuff highlight challenges that complicate any easy fix.
They do. The main hurdle is that you can't ethically conduct long-term randomized human trials. We have to rely on observational data and animal models, which always requires cautious interpretation.
And then there's that issue we keep coming back to, the nonlinear dose-response curve. What does that mean for public safety?
It means EDCs don't behave like traditional toxins, where a higher dose equals proportionally higher harm.
Right, it's not a straight line.
Not at all. The EDCs, some of the most profound biological effects are observed at extremely low exposures, doses far below what regulators typically even test for.
So the system is so finely tuned that even the faintest whisper of a chemical can cause a huge disruption.
Exactly, and that complexity is compounded by what researchers call synergistic effects. We
Mhm.
aren't exposed to just one chemical at a time.
We're exposed to a constant chemical cocktail.
A cocktail. And their combined effect is often worse than the sum of their individual parts. And of course, there's the problem of chemical substitution, which means we're always playing catch up.
This deep dive really confirms that EDCs like BPA, phthalates, BPS, and BPF are potent disruptors. They pose significant overlapping risks to our reproductive, metabolic, and developmental health by consistently interfering with estrogen.
The scientific consensus on this is strong, and it's growing daily. These findings empower individuals to take informed steps, but they also highlight a systemic need for more research and, frankly, for stronger, more adaptive regulatory oversight.
Right, oversight that can actually account for these low-dose, nonlinear effects.
That's the challenge.
And that leaves us with a provocative thought for you to consider. If the scientific data strongly demonstrates that the dose-response curves for these chemicals or nonlinear, meaning harmful effects, appear at exposures far below typical safety thresholds, how does that finding challenge the very foundation of our current regulatory approaches?
A critical question.
If safety limits are built on a linear model of toxicity, are they even capable of protecting us from this kind of chemical identity theft at the microscopic level?
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.